Over a millennium ago, the land of Nosgoth was a vibrant world once dominated by humans. But after a series of events triggered by a young vampire known as Kain, Nosgoth rapidly fell into decline, turning into a wasteland. To ensure the survival of his race, Kain, with the help of his council of highborn vampire lieutenants, built an empire to rule over Nosgoth that lasted for 1,000 years. After Kain's betrayal of his firstborn lieutenant, Raziel, he disappears, leaving his empire to collapse, and the vampire clans to their own machinations for the next few centuries. When Raziel awakens to find Nosgoth's change, he soon discovers the land is full of creatures that he'll have to battle in his pursuit of Kain. In this video, I'll be taking a look back at the creatures in Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver and analysing each of them in turn. And if you do enjoy this and want to see more, leave a like and subscribe, that way you can stay up to date on all future videos I put up. Before we start, it's best to mention some key points to provide some context to the monsters that will be covered in the video. The focal point to the series' story are the Pillars of Nosgoth. These mysterious columns stretching infinitely into the earth and sky were built to preserve the land. Each pillar has an assigned guardian, who are chosen at birth until death, whereby they are replaced with a worthy successor. These 9 guardians together are called the Circle of 9, and for a time, there was harmony and balance in Nosgoth, but dark forces eventually killed the guardians and corrupted the pillars. Kain discovered that he was the chosen successor to be the guardian of the balance pillar, but as he too had been corrupted, he was given a choice: sacrifice himself to restore the pillars and save Nosgoth, or live to condemn humanity. Kain refused the sacrifice and embraced his vampirism, and over the centuries to come, he built an empire with his throne placed by the 9 pillars. To consolidate the vampires' hold over the land, Kain reanimated the bodies of 6 members of the Seraphan Order, who were an elite group of vampire hunters, and gave each of them a portion of his vampiric gift, to task them with building an army to aid in his conquest of Nosgoth. These vampire lieutenants were Raziel, Turel, Dumah, Rahab, Zephon, and Melchiah. Each in this named order was bestowed Kain's gift with differing amounts of power, and as Raziel was the firstborn, he inherited the most from Kain's powers. This vampiric potency may be the likely reason Raziel evolved sooner than expected when he started to develop wings, but this was seen as a transgression in the eyes of his brothers, as Kain was meant to be the first to evolve before any other vampire within the council. In his anger, Kain broke his wings and ordered him to be thrown into the abyss. With Raziel gone, Kain withdrew from his council, rarely to be seen in public. His empire slowly went into decline for the next few centuries, and leaving his clans to become independent fiefdoms. Each of the vampire lieutenants over hundreds more years began to devolve into something monstrous due to Kain's corruption that they too inherited. It's this new world that Raziel awakens to, no longer a vampire, but a soul-eating wraith, and during his quest for revenge, Raziel will encounter several creatures, spectres, and even human threats in his endeavour to find Kain. So with that all in mind, let's take a closer look at each of them. Within the spectral realm, there are 2 types of denizens that feed on lost souls unfortunate enough to cross their paths. The Sluagh are feral scavengers of unknown origins who will devour lost spirits to satiate their hunger. They are naked humanoids with long unkempt hair, glowing bulbous yellow eyes, and long sharp teeth. They are the weakest of the 2 spectral entities, and are cowardly as they will likely flee if they cannot devour their prey. The creatures will attack by either doing a quick claw swipe, or lunge at Raziel if he's further away. The other denizens later encountered within the spectral realm are by far the most dangerous. These wraiths are spirits of vanquished vampires who were confined for too long in the underworld, and their vampiric natures have adapted over time to be able to not only devour souls, but drain the energy from other wraiths. These spirit creatures hide their faces within a hooded cloak, only revealing menacing eyes. The vampire wraiths can fly, making them more difficult to avoid in combat, and will use this ability to do a flyby attack. While on the ground, they'll take a swing with either arms in an attempt to weaken their prey. Unlike enemies from the material realm, spectral creatures show health levels in the form of a glowing halo around their heads that changes colour depending on the damage taken. After the collapse of Kain's empire, Melchiah's clan withdrew to a region beyond Raziel's old stronghold called the Necropolis, where humans once laid their dead to rest. This large cemetery became a suitable location for his clan's needs, as Melchiah was the last of the 6 Saraphans to be raised from the dead. He inherited the least portion of Kain's gift, resulting in his body being unable to sustain its own flesh by simply drinking blood. He was forced to skin his victims and stitch their flesh onto himself continuously to prevent his body from rotting. But over the centuries, Melchiah's condition would worsen, eventually devolving into a large bloated mass that now requires entire human body parts to support his frame. Like all vampire clans, the Melchiah are reflections of their master. These zombie-like creatures inherited Melchiah's bodily frailty, making them one of the weakest enemies in Nosgoth. Not only do they need to drink blood, the Melchiah need to consume the flesh of their victims in order to survive. Both fledglings and adults move awkwardly, scuttling toward their prey, while the adults have a unique ability to burrow underground that enables them to ambush their targets when they burst out of the ground. The fledglings are the less evolved members of the clan, wearing a loincloth with wrappings around the wrists and ankles, and still retain their former flesh that is slowly rotting away to reveal their spinal column. The adult enemy types, after pupating and emerging from the ground, appear with one arm and leg disproportionately bigger than the other, with green skin, red eyes, and the clan tattoo marked on their backs. While their attacks are the same, the adult variation are more damaging. They will use their claws to swipe at their prey with either arms, or will do a backhanded strike. When Raziel locates Melchiah, he sees the true extent of his transformation. He's made up of countless body parts, with some forming 2 large hands that he uses to drag his legless body. What little remains of Melchiah's original bone structure has now grown to form spikes that protrude from his back, and his tailbone has literally turned into a tail. He'll attempt to either crush Raziel under one of his giant hands, or will try to swallow his target whole. Though the vampire lieutenants have devolved over the years, they each still retain their special abilities. Melchiah can phase through barriers by passing between the spectral and material realms. But this was not enough to stop Raziel, as Melchiah was lured into the middle of the arena and killed by his own grinder. Vampires and spectres are not the only beings in Nosgoth that Raziel will encounter. Throughout the land are human survivors. While most remain in the safety of their cities, some human soldiers will be seen in various locations, taking the fight to the enemy. There are 2 types of vampire hunters that are either armed with a crossbow or a more advanced weapon in the form of a flamethrower. Fully clad in medieval-looking armour, the crossbowman will use the space to shoot off an arrow from a safe distance, but if they are forced to fight, they will use their loaded crossbow as a melee weapon by thrusting it forward, while their flamethrower counterparts uses a protective suit and helmet to guard themselves from the flames. The constant stream of fire makes it more difficult to attack them up close, and they're able to quickly reposition themselves, making it harder to approach them from behind. Though they can fight back, both human variations are not hostile to Raziel, so long as he doesn't harm them. When the Saraphan were brought back as vampires, Zephon also inherited a smaller portion of Kain's gift. He was the 5th to be reanimated, only being superior to Melchiah. Sometime after the Empire collapsed, Zephon and his clan seized control of a towering cathedral that was made by humans to aid them in their war against the vampire threat. Its musical pipes were tuned to be deadly to any creature who tried to attack their place of worship, but against overwhelming odds, and Zephon's clan using their stealthy wall-climbing abilities, the humans lost the cathedral and their musical weapons were decommissioned. Zephon further devolved, losing his climbing ability as he grew and merged into the cathedral itself. Spider-like in appearance, their long limbs, multiple eyes, and large fangs, the Zephonim can alternate between standing on two legs or walking on all fours, and are one of the fastest enemy types. Some will even stick to the side of walls, waiting to ambush their prey. And like spiders, these creatures can web spin their prey, wrapping them up in a cocoon and waiting for their victims to be digestible. The fledglings are smaller and weaker, with skinny bodies, shorter limbs, and pale white skin with black leggings. They would change into their counterparts in time after pupating from the cocoons that they made for themselves. While the adults look similar, there are a few noticeable differences. Along with their obvious larger size and glowing eyes, the adult Zephonim have prominent fangs, with strange bony protrusions coming out of their shoulders, and have the clan's symbol on their chest. Both enemy variations can do a claw swipe, or a bite attack if up close. While further away, they'll attempt a lunging attack. Zephon underwent such a transformation within the upper floors of the silenced cathedral that he grew several extra limbs. His bones and tendons attached to the stone walls, and his body developed into a giant egg sac. Zephon is by far the largest enemy that Raziel fights, as he's expanded to encompass the whole chamber that it becomes difficult to tell what's him or the cathedral's structure. Though Zephon cannot move, he makes up for it by having more various attacks. With his 4 giant limbs, he can wear down Raziel's health by performing either a quick jab or a crushing blow, whereby his limb will be briefly stuck into the ground or wall. Up close, Zephon will use his long claws to either swipe at the target, execute a double stab, or will try to devour Raziel. Zephon, however, eventually burned to death after several of his own eggs were set alight by a dead hunter's flamethrower and thrown back at him. Not all humans fear the vampire menace that plagues Nosgoth. Some even believe they are gods and will not hesitate to attack Raziel in order to protect their masters. These vampire worshippers reside within the silenced cathedral and serve their every needs, often performing blood sacrifices on kidnapped victims and even on themselves to help sustain the vampires. Part of the game's cut content would have revealed that their cult leader was a high priestess, and along with the rest of the vampire worshippers, originally lived beneath the human citadel in a place called the Undercity, where they abducted and killed people for their blood rituals. The novitiates wear grey robes with red trimmings in what looks like a cult garb, with a helmet to protect themselves during combat. They wield a decorative halberd with a crimson jewel on the blade and use it to either swipe or thrust at their target with the blade end, or hit them with the spike on the opposite end of the handle. The adepts also appear to be wearing some kind of red ceremonial robe along with a metal helmet. They wield 2 sacrificial blades that they can use at long range by throwing them at Raziel. While in close combat, they can execute a single blade slash, lunge forward to do a double swipe, or if a blade has been thrown, will even try to punch their target. As the vampire worshippers are only human, they are one of the weakest enemies, and are more of a nuisance rather than being any real threat. As the 4th Sarafan to have been turned by Kain, Rahab was expected to be one of the weaker vampires, yet surprisingly, he had managed to accomplish a feat that most vampires could never do. He overcame his weakness to water, and soon after Kain's disappearance, Rahab would make a nearby abbey his clan's new home. The place was perfect for them as the area was abandoned by humans centuries ago when Nosgoth's landscape changed, causing the whole region to flood. As Rahab's clan were the only vampires capable of swimming, they were the dominant force of the waters, but due to Rahab's physical changes, he lost his legs and could never walk on land again. The Rahabim are fish-like vampires that overcame the acidic touch of water, and unlike their master, the fledglings and adults still had the use of their legs, making them capable predators on both land and in water. Though they are an amphibious clan that can breathe and live below water, they also have reptilian features that makes them look cobra-like. The fledglings appear smaller, wearing brown leather shorts, knee pads and arm wraps. They also wear a pair of artificial fins attached to their ankles to aid them in swimming more proficiently. When they develop into adults, they will burst out of their pupating pods that are anchored to the water's floor. They appear more larger, having red eyes, with tattoos all over their bodies, and wearing golden jewelry. These two enemy types are dangerous in both water and on land, as they will attempt to bite their target while swimming, or up close during combat. They can also do a lunging bite attack, and even spit an energy projectile from a long range. Rahab's transformation wasn't as dramatic as his lesser brothers, due to gaining a larger portion of Kain's gift. His change instead made him adapt to his environment, allowing Rahab to form a large fishtail in place of his legs, with scaly grey skin and webbed hands. Though he and the Rahabim have superiority in some fields over other vampire clans, they are extremely susceptible to sunlight. This was a fact well known to Raziel, as he tried to use Rahab's weakness against him during their battle. He only has 2 attacks. Rahab's close attack is to use his sharp teeth to devour Raziel, while his long-range attack involves spitting an energy projectile. But he too eventually was killed when Raziel destroyed all of the stained glass windows within the chamber to allow the sunlight to enter and hit Rahab. The third lieutenant to be raised by Kain, Dumah gained a strong portion of his powers, leading to his offsprings being one of the most powerful vampires in Nosgoth. When Kain ordered Raziel to be thrown into the abyss, it was Dumah and Turel who did the deed. Centuries after this event, Dumah grew in size and strength, even believing himself to now be superior to Kain. But any challenge of leadership was cut short with Kain's disappearance. Even worse, the humans managed to create a large enough force to attack the Dumahim's city and succeeded in defeating Dumah, who was impaled on his throne, leaving the city abandoned and the clan scattered all over Nosgoth, being reduced to nothing more than nomadic scavengers. The basic enemy types Raziel will encounter throughout the game are the Dumahim, now mere shadows of their former selves. They still retain their battle armor that they once wore with pride. They draw blood out of their victims by using their elongated tongues. The green-skinned fledglings even use their tongues in combat, whether Raziel is close or further away. And failing this, they can perform a strong punch by lunging toward their target. The adult Dumahim are naturally larger with red eyes and blue skin. They don't use their long tongues in battle, preferring to use instead their mace-like gauntlet to bludgeon their targets. They will either swing the mace across, do a quick swipe with their free hand, or throw their entire weight behind a lunging attack with their mace arm. When Raziel found Dumah in his throne room and removed the stakes from his body, he was able to return from the spectral realm. But still carrying his hatred for Dumah, Raziel wanted nothing more than to eat his soul. Dumah has a special constricting ability whereby he can run circles around his target to create spectral energy that does damage. His attacks also include a close-range swipe, a ground punch that will cause a quake to stun Raziel, or will even use his new energy draining ability that he gained during his time as a vampire Wraith. Against all this, however, Raziel manages to lure Dumah to his death when he burned him using the city's old furnaces. Another character missing from the game is Turel, who was the second member of the elite Sarafan Brotherhood that Kain resurrected. He was given a greater portion of Kain's gift that made him an extremely powerful being, second only to Raziel. Along with Dumah, he cast Raziel into the abyss without question, and when Kain disappeared, Turel with his clan withdrew to an area northeast of the Silenced Cathedral, an industrial region of Nosgoth that had a towering furnace called the Smokestack, made by vampires to churn out smoke into the skies to placate the sun's rays to a more tolerable level. This worked to some extent, as most vampires were able to move around in daylight, with the exception of fledglings and the Rahabim. After Raziel returned and began his quest for vengeance, Turel managed to avoid his wrath, but did encounter some of the Turelim vampires, who were sent out on menial tasks. These are some of the most strongest vampires in Nosgoth, and appear as humanoid bat-like creatures with large ears. Even the fledglings appear larger than the other clan's adults. They wear a black collar along with gloves and leather pants, while the larger sized adults wear brown attire with the clan logo on the back. Both enemy types have the same attacks. They'll swing either arms to claw Raziel, or try to swat him, and both can spit energy projectiles as a long-range attack. Raziel battles one of these adults within the Tomb of the Sarafan, who was given the task of acting as its guardian. This Tomb Guardian had the same attacks as the Turelim, in addition to having the energy drain ability, which is something that can be acquired by an adult vampire if they have spent enough time in the spectral realm as a wraith, and were later revived back into the material realm. Kain appears only twice to Raziel in the whole story, who never suffered the same fate of devolution like his vampire progeny did. When Raziel arrives before him in the throne room, Kain looks as if he was waiting for his arrival, stating that both his empire and Raziel had outlasted their usefulness before drawing the Soul Reaver blade to do battle. He moves around the room by teleporting to a new position before charging up his sword and firing off a yellow beam of energy powerful enough to kill Raziel's body. But even this doesn't stop the Wraith Raziel from returning from the spectral realm in a newly formed physical body. Eventually, Kain grows bored of the fight, and gaining the upper hand, he struck the Soul Reaver against Raziel, breaking the blade into pieces. This again appears to be an expected event that he wanted to make happen, alluding to not only his own, but Raziel's destiny too, before disappearing from the throne room. When Raziel confronts Kain within the Chronoplast, which is a time-travelling device, it's revealed that Kain knew of events before they even happened, and knows of others that will occur in the future. While activating the Chronoplast's mechanisms, Kain keeps Raziel distracted to give the time-streaming device the chance to charge. He would teleport away and attack using a purple electrical beam that came from his hands to hold back Raziel. The battle ended when the portal finally activated, allowing Kain to make his escape. And here, they would be a step closer to their destinies. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking into doing more monster analysis videos at some point on Silent Hill 1 and both Resident Evil Remake and Zero from the Origins collection. So if you're new to the channel and are interested in any of these, then subscribe. That way you can stay up to date on all future videos I put up. And once again, thanks to all of you who have subscribed and are helping to make this channel grow. People like Soul Reaver 1983 and others who regularly comment on my videos are helping the channel to go a long way, so cheers to every one of you. Up next, I'll be doing the Batman Arkham City Easter eggs and references video, along with its side missions and DLCs. So until the next video, bye everyone.